Something interesting is quietly developing behind the scenes in New England right now, and if you've been paying close attention to how the roster is shaping up, you can already see that the Patriots are not done making moves in free agency. Even though things feel slow across the league, this is just that typical dead period before the NFL draft. And that doesn't mean decisions aren't being discussed internally every single day. Right now, the Patriots are sitting at 73 players on the roster, and that number matters a lot more than people think. During the offseason, teams are allowed to carry up to 90 players, which means New England still has 17 open spots to work with. When you factor in their 11 draft picks, plus the expected undrafted free agents that always come in after the draft, you're still looking at least a handful of available opportunities to bring in additional talent from free agency. That's where things start to get really interesting, because one name that has suddenly come back into the conversation is Christian Wilkins. And this is where you have to really think about risk versus reward. Wilkins hasn't played since the 2024 season due to a serious foot injury, specifically a Jones fracture that ended his year early. After that, things got even more complicated. He was released by the Raiders before the 2025 season in a move that surprised a lot of people around the league, especially considering the contract he had signed just a year earlier, a 4-year deal worth $110 million. Now here's where it gets even more intriguing. Despite everything that has happened, reports indicate that Wilkins fully intends to return and play this season. Not only that, but as many as 26 teams have already reached out and are monitoring his recovery, waiting for the moment he's ready to sign. So ask yourself this: do you really believe the Patriots are not one of those teams keeping an eye on him? It's very hard to imagine they wouldn't at least be doing their homework. And when you look at the fit, it actually makes a lot of sense on paper. This is a player who, when healthy, has proven he can be one of the most disruptive defensive tackles in the league. Just go back to his 2023 season, where he recorded 65 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, and 9 sacks from the interior. That kind of production at that position is rare, and it's exactly the type of presence that can change the way a defense operates. But the Patriots aren't necessarily looking for him to come in and be the main guy. That's what makes this potential move even more logical. With players like Milton Williams and Christian Barmore already in place, Wilkins would be stepping into a rotational role, not a full-time starting job. That means less pressure, fewer snaps, and a much more controlled environment for him to get back to full strength. And let's not forget what happened last season when depth became an issue. When Milton Williams went down with an ankle injury, the entire run defense collapsed. Before that injury, the Patriots had not allowed a single 100-yard rusher. After he got hurt, they gave up multiple 100-yard games, including dominant performances by opposing running backs who simply took over games. That drop-off exposed just how thin the margin is when you don't have enough reliable bodies in the trenches. So bringing in someone like Wilkins isn't just about adding talent, it's about protecting yourself from that exact situation happening again. Even if he's only playing a limited number of snaps, his presence alone could stabilize the rotation and prevent the kind of defensive breakdown we saw before. Of course, this isn't without risk. There are still questions about his recovery, and there were also off-the-field concerns mentioned around the time of his release. The Patriots would have to be completely confident in both his health and his ability to fit into the locker room. But at the same time, this is an organization that has never been afraid to take calculated risks, especially when the potential upside is this high. And financially, it could make even more sense than people realize. With around $35 million in cap space still available, the Patriots have the flexibility to offer a short-term deal, something like a 1-year contract in the range of $6 to $7 million. That kind of deal minimizes the long-term risk while giving the team a chance to benefit if Wilkins returns to his previous form. So now you start to see the bigger picture. This isn't just a random name being thrown around during a slow news cycle. This is a potential move that fits a real need, aligns with the team's current roster structure, and could provide serious value if everything goes right. And at the same time, this is just one piece of a much larger puzzle, because there are still other major storylines developing, including the ongoing speculation around a possible move for a top wide receiver and how the Patriots plan to address that position moving forward. So let me ask you this: knowing the risk, the injury history, and the potential upside, would you take the chance and bring Christian Wilkins to New England? Or is this a move you think the Patriots should avoid? And when you shift the focus to the offensive side of the ball, that's where things start to feel even more complex. Because while the defensive line discussion is about depth and calculated risk, the wide receiver situation is about making a potential franchise-altering move. There's been a lot of noise surrounding a possible trade involving A.J. Brown, and it's not just random speculation anymore. The connection to New England continues to come up from credible conversations. And when you look at the landscape across the league, there aren't many teams that both can and would realistically make a move like like this work. That's exactly why the Patriots keep being mentioned as the most logical landing spot. But here's where things need to be clarified, because there's been some confusion out there. Despite all the talk, there is no handshake agreement in place right now. Nothing is secretly done behind the scenes, and that actually makes sense when you think about how the NFL operates. Any kind of premature agreement like that would create serious problems from a league rules standpoint. So everything we're hearing is still in the realm of possibility, not certainty. What is real, though, is the timing aspect. If a trade were to happen, it's much more likely to take place after June 1st. That has everything to do with financial flexibility and how teams manage the salary cap. Waiting until that point allows for a smoother transition from a cap perspective. And that's why this situation may feel like it's dragging out, even if there are real conversations happening behind the scenes. Now, even with all signs pointing toward New England being a strong candidate, the Patriots cannot afford to rely on just one outcome. They need a backup plan. And this is where the strategy becomes really important. Because if A.J. Brown doesn't end up in a Patriots uniform, you still have a major need at wide receiver that has to be addressed. And when you look at the current free agent market, it's not exactly inspiring. There are names out there, sure, but most of them come with limitations. Whether it's age, inconsistency, or declining production. You might consider bringing back someone familiar, but beyond that, there aren't many options that truly move the needle in a significant way. That's why the NFL draft starts to look like the more attractive path. The Patriots hold valuable picks, including one late in the first round and another early in the second. And this draft class offers a range of wide receiver prospects with real upside. Some of these players could slip into the second round, which creates an opportunity to find a high-ceiling talent on a rookie contract. And that's a key point here. A rookie deal gives you flexibility, both financially and in terms of development. You're not just plugging a hole for one season, you're potentially building a long-term piece of your offense. There's always risk involved with young players, but there's also the chance to hit on someone who becomes a foundational weapon for years to come. At the same time, the Patriots have to balance that approach with their other priorities. There's still a strong argument to be made that their biggest need heading into the draft is at edge rusher. If that's the direction they go in the first round, then wide receiver naturally becomes the focus in the second, which aligns perfectly with the depth available at that position in this class. So now you're looking at multiple layers of decision-making all happening at once. Do you wait and push aggressively for a proven star like a Jay Brown, knowing it might cost significant assets and require patience? Or do you pivot toward the draft, trust your scouting, and try to develop the next great receiver within your own system? And this is what makes this offseason feel different. The Patriots aren't acting out of desperation. They're being deliberate. They're weighing options, managing risk, and positioning themselves to make smart, calculated decisions rather than rushing into something just to make headlines. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about one move. It's about building a complete roster that can sustain success, not just flash potential for a short period of time. Because the reality is, everything we've talked about so far connects back to one central idea. The Patriots are trying to avoid repeating past mistakes while still being aggressive enough to take the next step as a contender. You look at the defensive side, and the potential addition of Christian Wilkins is not just about adding a recognizable name, it's about learning from what happened when depth failed them. That stretch after Milton Williams went down exposed a weakness that simply can't exist if this team expects to compete at a high level again. The drop-off wasn't subtle, it was dramatic, and it changed the identity of the defense almost overnight. So even a rotational piece like Wilkins, if healthy, becomes more valuable than people initially realize because he helps stabilize that entire unit. Then you flip it over to the offensive side, and the conversation becomes even more important because this is where games are decided late in the season. The Patriots know they need more explosiveness at wide receiver, and whether that comes from a blockbuster trade or a smart draft pick, they cannot afford to miss on this decision. This isn't just about adding another body to the depth chart. This is about finding a player who can consistently impact games, draw coverage, and elevate the entire offense. And what stands out the most is how calculated everything feels right now. There's no panic. There's no sense that the front office is forcing moves just to stay relevant. Instead, there's a clear structure to what they're doing. They're leaving flexibility in the roster. They're preserving cap space. They're keeping multiple pathways open, whether it's free agency, a post-June 1st trade, or the draft. That's a big shift in approach, and it's something fans should pay attention to because it suggests confidence in the long-term plan. You're not seeing reckless decisions, you're seeing patience mixed with readiness. And that's usually when organizations put themselves in the best position to capitalize when the right opportunity finally presents itself. And let's be honest, opportunities are coming. Whether it's a surprise release, a trade that suddenly gains momentum, or a draft prospect that falls further than expected, the Patriots are setting themselves up to be ready for that moment. That's why the open roster spots matter. That's why the available cap space matters. It's all part of being able to react quickly when something changes. So when you put everything together, the potential Wilkins signing, the ongoing A.J. Brown situation, the draft strategy, this isn't a team sitting still during the offseason. This is a team quietly building options, preparing for multiple scenarios, and making sure that when they do make a move, it actually pushes them forward instead of just creating short-term excitement. And that's what makes the next few weeks so important. The draft is right around the corner. Free agency is still active, even if it doesn't feel like it. Trade discussions can heat up at any moment. All the pieces are in place for something significant to happen, and the Patriots are right in the middle of it. So now it really comes down to execution. They've put themselves in a flexible position, they've identified their needs, and they've explored multiple ways to address them. The question is, when the moment comes, will they make the right call? And as we move forward, one thing becomes even clearer. This entire situation is less about individual names and more about how all these decisions connect into one bigger identity for the Patriots moving into the next season. Because think about it for a second. If they bring in a player like Christian Wilkins and he returns anywhere close to his 2023 level, you're not just adding depth, you're reinforcing a defensive philosophy built around physicality in the trenches. You're creating a rotation that doesn't fall apart when one piece goes down. And that alone can be the difference between being a solid defense and a dominant one over the course of a full season. At the same time, if the A.J. Brown scenario somehow becomes reality, you're instantly changing the way opposing defenses prepare for you. That's not just adding a receiver, that's adding a focal point. That's someone who dictates coverage, opens up space for other players, and gives your offense a level of confidence it may not have had before. But again, that's the high-end scenario. The Patriots are clearly preparing for multiple outcomes, and that's what makes this entire approach so important. Because if that move doesn't happen, and they go into the draft instead, then everything shifts toward development and long-term growth. You're betting on your ability to identify talent, to coach it, and to turn potential into production. And we've seen teams succeed with that model, but it requires patience from both the organization and the fan base. And that's really the balance New England is trying to strike right now. Immediate impact versus long-term stability. Proven talent versus emerging potential. Risk versus control. You can even see it in how they're thinking about contracts. A short-term low-risk deal for someone like Wilkins fits perfectly into that mindset. It doesn't lock you into anything long-term, but it gives you a chance to benefit if things go right. The same logic applies to waiting on a trade. You don't force it early. You let the situation develop, and if the timing aligns, then you strike. And this is where the front office really earns its reputation. It's easy to make moves when the path is obvious. It's much harder to navigate situations where there are multiple viable options, each with its own level of uncertainty. That's exactly where the Patriots are right now. They're not backed into a corner. They're not forced to overpay. They're not limited to one direction. They have choices, and in the NFL, having choices is one of the most valuable positions you can be in. But with that also comes pressure, because when you have flexibility and multiple opportunities, fans expect you to get it right. There's no excuse of being stuck or having no options. Every move, or even every move you choose not to make, becomes part of the evaluation. So as we get closer to the draft and deeper into the offseason, every small development starts to matter more.